John has covered a ton of different sports. You may think of him as primarily a football guy. And for those of you that go back a few years, maybe a lot of Lady Vols guy as well. But he's covered more than his fair share of sports. So I want to throw this at you, John, as after what you've seen, which is Kim Caldwell's team playing at a high level, which is Tennessee's basketball team raising up to number one in some rankings. Tennessee fans should be most excited about which program?
Well, I think they're excited about both programs, but I think the men have a larger following overall because of that, the fact that they're number one. And I thought going into the season, this would be Rick Barnes' best team, his most versatile team. They can win a lot of different ways. So already to be number one, I know this is a March sport, and being number one in December doesn't mean a whole lot, but I think it speaks to the talent Tennessee has. And when you just watch this team play, it hurt to lose JP Estrella in the post, but this team has a lot of weapons, and the versatility of it is what impresses me. So I would say probably more excited about the Vols being number one, but also very excited about the Lady Vols being unbeaten at this point.
So, John, you came into the season. Let's inspect those thoughts about the men Vols, and you said this would be Rick Barnes's best team. That's quite the statement. And Caleb made something similar after you lose a Dalton Connect, who's lighting it up in the NBA.
Yeah, I just think, and Dalton Connect was a great player. Tennessee made the Elite Eight, but of all the teams, I think when you get into the versatility matters to me because when you get in the NCAA tournament, you play all season, you play in the SEC, you kind of know what you're up against in every game. You know the coaches, you know the player personnel, you've been through it before. And personnel changes from year to year, but still the system and all that stuff. So there's a great familiarity. You go into the NCAA tournament, you don't know what you're going to be up against, and you don't have a lot of time to prepare. So you need a team that can win different ways. I think that's just really important when you get into the NCAA tournament. And I think Tennessee has the capability of doing that. It can get in a 3-point game with you, and it can play in the post. For example, it was overmatched against Purdue last year with the Final Four bid on the line because of Zach Edey. I think this team would be better equipped to handle that kind of dominating post player than the previous team was.
Okay, Caleb, I'm going to cop out just a little bit. I'm more excited about the Lady Vols because Tennessee went out and made that hire, and I think it's got a lot of panache to it, and I think there's a lot of substance to it as well. With Rick Barnes, I'm sorry, but I have to go back in that shell of I don't know if he can get you to the Final Four because he historically hasn't. Go ahead.
Okay, and I'm having a tough time determining this too. John, I want to point out they also lost to Purdue. One of the reasons they're better this year, they lost to Purdue because Jonas Adu melted down and panicked against the pressure of playing Zach Edey, and I don't think Felix Opara looks like somebody who would do that.
No.
So he would accept the challenge.
Not at all.
Yeah. Sure. So that was a big one. This year, you should be more excited about men's basketball because I'm with John. I said it before the year. This was going to be Rick Barnes' best team that he's ever, not just at Tennessee. This is the best team he's ever had, period. And I think this Tennessee team is far and away the most versatile in the country. And I think that I thought they could just recreate Dalton Connect in the aggregate with a bunch of players, but Chaz Lanier is looking like he can just straight up replace Dalton Connect scoring as far as what he's done recently. So this year, you should be more excited about the men's basketball program. But John, I'm starting to come around to, yeah, I'm more excited overall, like about the long-term future of the women's basketball program if I'm a Tennessee fan, because what Kim Caldwell's doing this year, plus if you look at her recruiting, she's already got 3 5-stars and 2 4-stars committed for next year. This team's going to be really good. And if you remember, it all comes down to the question that you asked her in the press conference that went so viral back in April, when you asked if her style could translate to this era or to this level of play. And she said, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think it could. The question I think you were really asking was, she didn't have the height at Marshall that you need to have at the SEC to compete. So you need height, athleticism, and shooting to run her system. She had to sacrifice one in the transfer portal this year because she couldn't be that picky. She sacrificed the shooting. but that shooting is going to come with her recruiting class next year. And so how deadly can this team be when they have this level of height, this level of athleticism running this system, and they have a bunch of elite shooters at the same time?
Yeah, I guess my question was also aimed at the possibility of playing so many people. She rotates 11 people now, does mass substitution. If you get the very elite players, if you get a Caitlin Clark, for example, you kind of in a big game, you want her on the floor 35 minutes. But I think if she got that kind of player, I think she would do that in the biggest games. However, I didn't think her system would be this effective this quickly. The Lady Vols probably have lost more pounds than any team in college basketball. Every player on the team looks like she's lost 20 pounds. Also, Kim Caldwell, in getting transfers, she identified the players that work in this system. Talasha Cooper is going to be one of the best players in the SEC. She sat out last year. She was on, but she fits this system perfectly. So she identified the right players to work in this system. And watching the game against Iowa, watching the game against Florida State, this team is way better than I thought it would be. I didn't think this team could make the NCAA tournament. I thought it could be maybe the 10th best team in the SEC. Now I don't have any doubt that it'll make the NCAA tournament because it's going to beat some good teams in the SEC. Not saying it'll beat South Carolina, LSU, maybe not Oklahoma and Texas, but it will spring some upsets. So, yeah, I think Lady Vol fans have really good reason to be very excited, not just about this season, but about where the program is headed.
John, and how healthy is it for the fan base? Brought to you by Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Tell Bo and all the crew down there at Quality Tire Pros that Off the Hook Sports and Dave Hooker said hello. How healthy is it for the fan base that we're talking about somebody that has zero ties to Pat Summitt? It just seemed like that was always the rug to be pulled out from somebody, even when they had success. It was like, well, she should have success. I mean, she coached under Pat Summitt. And it was always a reason to kind of hold that against her. I'm not saying that the last two hires were bad in Kelly and Holly, but I just think this one kind of finally, after all these years, provides a clean break. Rest in peace, Pat Summitt. I don't want that to sound at all insensitive.
No, it's not insensitive. I think it's natural for fans to want to cling to the Pat Summitt era. She's one of the greatest coaches of all time in any sport in college athletics, and she was much loved and much known. Had a great reputation throughout, not just in the SEC, but throughout the country. So you want to cling to that era. I can understand that, and it really didn't have any choice but to hire Holly Warlick. I don't think Holly Warlick had ever had any interest in being a head coach anywhere, but she was thrust into an unusual situation where Pat was forced to retire because of early onset dementia, Alzheimer's. So she became a head coach, and she actually did a better job than Kelly did. And Kelly was a revered player, part of 3 national championship teams, had some success in coaching, but her resume didn't really justify her getting a job of Tennessee's statue. So I think what Danny White did, I give Danny White, Tennessee's AD, all the credit in the world for this. He goes out and picks, I was like, who is this? I've never heard of this person. She coached at Glenville State where's Glenville State? Is that in New York? I don't know. It's in West Virginia. And then she has one good year at Marshall. But Danny White knew what he's doing. He's got a great track record for hiring coaches, and he's hired somebody who's come in and already put her mark on this program. And I was talking to Joan Cronin, former AD at Tennessee a while back, and she said when she went to a Tennessee practice, this team's practice, Kim Caldwell's practice, she said It reminded her of Pat's practices. It was very demanding. And so
I like to hear that, because I used to say you could sell tickets to watch Pat's practices. I mean, they were entertaining every single time I went. I was like, who's she going to get on this time?